Art and
Oh,
play.
hello there. You caught me reading. My name's Eric. I am an arts educator doing some work with the Holter Museum of Art. And today we're going to do a little art short. We're going to read a book about two artists and then do an arts activity in the style of those two artists. The book that we're going to be reading is When Pigasso Met Mootisse by Nina Layden. There once was a young pig named Pigasso. While the other piglets rolled in the mud and played games, Pigasso painted. He painted anything and everything, and in a most unusual way. At the same time, there once was a young bull named Mootisse. Mootisse was not like the other bulls. He wasn't interested in bullfighting. Mootisse was happy only when he painted pictures. And he painted big, bold, bright pictures. In time, word of Pigasso's talent spread through the pig provinces. Soon, art-loving pigs from all over lined up to buy his creations. At the same time, Mootisse was getting famous in the cattle community. There weren't many households that didn't own a moosterpiece. Pigasso and Mootisse were becoming art superstars. But this came with a price. Everybody wanted to see them. Art buyers, art sellers, art students, art historians, art groupies. It was an art attack. One day, Pigasso got fed up and said, "I'm tired of this noisy pig pen." At the same time, Mootisse declared, "I'm sick of this crowded cow town." Needing a change, they both decided to look for a peaceful place where they could paint without distractions. So each of the two artists looked far and wide for the perfect spot. Pigasso found a lovely farm looking towards the east. Mootisse found a handsome farm facing the west. After Pigasso moved in, he went to introduce himself to his new neighbor across the road. At the same time, Mootisse went to introduce himself to his new neighbor across the road. That is how Pigasso met Mootisse. And coincidentally, that is also how Mootisse met Pigasso. At first, Pigasso and Mootisse were friendly and welcomed each other as neighbors. But soon, things began to change. It started one day when Pigasso criticized one of Mootisse's paintings. Then, Mootisse made fun of one of Pigasso's. Mootisse called Pigasso an art hog. Then Pigasso called Mootisse a mad cow. Mootisse quipped, "You paint like a 2-year-old." Pigasso retorted, "You paint like a wild beast." Mootisse raged, "Your colors look like mud." Pigasso spat, "Your paintings look like color by numbers." Then things got really out of hand. It was a modern art mess. Pigasso stormed off into his house. "That Mootisse doesn't like my art," he huffed. "Well, I'll show him." And Mootisse bullied his way into his house. "I'll give that Pigasso something he can really criticize," he snorted. Then a full-scale feud erupted, but it was a most unusual battle. Armed with ladders and buckets of paint, Mootisse launched the first attack. He started at dawn. By the end of the evening, he had succeeded in transforming the outside of his house into a monster-sized moosterpiece. Not to be outdone, Pigasso fired up his paintbrushes and, in full view of the enemy, counterattacked. He turned his farm into a huge and outrageous pork of art. The two artists then retreated into their houses and pulled down the shades. Pigasso certainly didn't want to look out his window and stare at a Mootisse, and Mootisse had no desire to give his rooms a view of a Pigasso. This presented a problem, and there seemed to be only one solution. Without a word to each other, Pigasso and Mootisse each began to build a huge wooden fence down the middle of the road. At first, Pigasso and Mootisse seemed satisfied. Both artists went back to painting by themselves. But after a while, Pigasso was surprised to find that he missed that bull-headed Mootisse. And at the same time, Mootisse found his studio empty without the presence of pig-headed Pigasso. Pigasso pondered, "That Mootisse isn't such a bad artist. He has some interesting ideas." Mootisse moaned, "That Pigasso may not paint like me, but he knows what he's doing." However, being naturally pig-headed and bull-headed, neither artist knew how to apologize to the other. So they did what they do best. They let their paintbrushes do the talking. Pigasso painted on one side of the fence, and Mootisse painted on the other. Each worked until they were exhausted. It was strangely quiet when they were done. Then, curious to see what Mootisse had been doing, Pigasso sprinted around to the other side. At the same time, Mootisse galloped over to Pigasso's side. The silence was broken as the two artists began laughing at their amazing work of art. From that day on, Pigasso and Mootisse became great friends. They happily took down the fence and shared their different views. A few months later, a big museum bought the fence. Pigasso called his side when Pigasso met Mootisse. Mootisse called his side when Mootisse met Pigasso. The critics called it incredible. All right, well, now that we've read all about Pigasso and Mootisse, we're going to do our own art project. We're going to make our own work of art. And we're going to do this in the style of both Mootisse and Pigasso. So to do this art project, you're going to need a couple of things. We're going to need either 3 different pieces of colored paper. I've got a few right here. Or if you don't have colored paper, that's okay. You can just take some sheets of white paper and color it in. And if you want to color in your white paper, you can do that with whatever materials you have. You can use watercolors. If you're going to use watercolors, make sure that you've got some water so you can actually use it. You can use some markers or some colored pencils. Or maybe you've got some crayons that you'd like to use. Then we're going to also need either a black marker or just a marker of a darker color, purple or blue or something like that. We're going to need a glue stick so that we can put our whole piece of art together. And if you're old enough, or if you have parents guiding you and watching you, it'd be nice to have some scissors. If you don't have scissors or if you're not old enough to use them yet, that's okay, because we can rip our paper for the parts that we need that for. So we're going to do this painting first in the style of Mootisse, then in the style of Pigasso, then we're going to finish off with a little bit more Mootisse. So to start off, get either a big sheet of colored paper, or if you want your white paper to color in, and I'll show you what it can look like if you're using a white piece of paper and coloring it in. This is what it might look like if you're using watercolor to color that in, dipping into some green. I'm just going and putting some green on there. I've got a tiny little brush, so this would take a while, but you just would fill up that whole piece of paper. Or if you want to use a marker, I'll go and use a green marker again. Just fill all of it in. Or a green colored pencil. It's a little bit of a different green, but that's all right. You would probably be using the same color for this whole thing. I'm just showing what these different materials look like. Here's a green crayon. Yeah. So if you're using this approach, where you're using a blank white piece of paper and coloring it in, you would just color the whole thing with whichever material you wanted to use. Watercolor, marker, colored pencil, crayon. If you've got something else you'd like to use, you can use that too. I'm going to use a colored piece of paper for my base. And then, once you've got that guy, you're going to take either another piece of colored paper or another white piece of paper. And this is where your scissors are going to come in handy. Or, again, if you can't use your scissors, or if you don't have scissors in your house, you can just rip a piece of paper. And you want it to be ripped or cut about in half. So that covers up about half of your first sheet of paper. And you're going to use a glue stick so that you can stick your second piece of paper onto your first. Got my glue on the back of that smaller piece of paper. I'm going to put it right on top of my first piece so that sticks on there. There we go. Now I'm going to really quick color in my second piece of paper. All right, so now you've got both of your pieces of paper, you've got them attached. If you used any white paper, you've got that all colored in. And now we're ready to say goodbye to Mootisse for a little bit, just for a bit, because we're going to move on to our Pigasso section. So, grab any piece of white paper that you have left, and we're going to either cut or rip out an oval shape. And you want this shape to take up a good amount of your pieces of paper, your canvas. It's not made out of a canvas material, but we're going to call it a canvas. So there we go. I've got a nice oval shape going on. And just like we did with our second piece of paper, we're going to use our glue stick to attach this to our work of art. Da, 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 da. Slap it on there. There we go. Oh, you can see I got a couple of pieces of crayon on there that smeared a little bit, but that's all right because we're still going to be coloring on top of this. Now, grab your dark colored Sharpie or marker. We're going to start making a face in the way that Picasso would have done it. Now, Picasso was a cubist, so he had a whole bunch of different shapes going on, and the way that we're going to look at making our face in his style is imagine that you're drawing one face from a bunch of different angles. Or maybe it'll help you to think of taking a face and just moving all the parts of the face all over the place. So maybe you take one of your eyes and you move it down on your cheek, and your other eye goes over by your ear, and your nose gets split in half and part of it lays flat against your face, and the other one goes and points up, and your mouth suddenly is lopsided to the side, and things are just all over the place. That's kind of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using a lot of straight and jagged lines for doing this. So I'm going to start by almost kind of putting my face in half. But when I get up towards where my nose goes, maybe I'll jut out there a little bit and come on up and have something that could, maybe that's a bit of a hairline. And down here, I've got some nostrils going on. I've got a little slant for a lip. There's a mouth. And I've got one eye way up here. Some lashes. And the other eye, like it's a profile, like it's coming from the side. And let's see what to do with our hair. And maybe I'll add a little bit of an ear. And this ear is way down here. And now I've got a Pigasso kind of a head. Once you get all of your head shapes going on, we're going to start going in and coloring in. You see how our head, our face is kind of broken up into different sections? We're going to fill each of those sections with different colors. And again, if you want to use just one material for all of your colors, you can do that. Or if you want to use crayons and colored pencils and markers and watercolors, whatever else you have, you can do that as well. So I'm going to start with a green crayon for some of that hair. There we go. And I want to keep going with some of that green color for the hair, but I'm going to switch over to a marker because I'm kind of feeling like that. There it goes. And then maybe I'll finish off with some green watercolor for that hair section. Maybe. There we go. Filling that in. And I'll use a colored pencil for some of this face. And one of the differences between Pigasso and Mootisse is where Mootisse usually used big blocks of color. Pigasso let his colors kind of fade in and out at sections. There'd be parts where they were really, really bright and really visible, and then parts where they kind of fade away. Maybe they'd fade into another color, kind of blend in a little bit there. If you remember that part where Mootisse says that Picasso's colors look like mud, that's what he was talking about, where his colors kind of blend into each other. Mootisse liked his colors to be very distinct from each other. And Pigasso said, let them have fun, let them meet each other and hang out a little bit. Other side with some different colors. But again, maybe we switch over to a different material over here. Which one do I want? Which color do I want? I'll use a little bit of red. And then we'll do maybe some blue down here for my nose. I'm going to do the nostrils even a different color still. There we go. And let's work on these lips a bit. Use a slightly different green to add a little bit of variety, kind of blend those together again, the way that maybe Picasso would have done if he wanted to make a painting like this. So for a lot of this, all that you're really trying to do in the style of Picasso is whatever would make sense to do when you're trying to make a face look like a face, do the opposite. Do something else. We're not trying to make a regular, ordinary face. We're making extravagant, colorful, exciting faces. That's what Picasso would have done. Right. Now we'll color in those eyes. Make them look fantastic too. Ooh, haven't used you yet. So here again, I'm trying to kind of blend these two colors together so that, yeah, they are going to look a little muddy. Whereas with our stuff that we're doing in Mootisse style, we're trying to keep much more separate for colors. All right, and that is our Picasso face, all colored in. Look at that. Just a hodgepodge, a little mess of colors all over the place. Love it. Now, for our final step, we're going to say thank you and goodbye to Mootisse. So we're going to to Picasso, because we're going to jump back into Mootisse. So now take yet another piece of colored paper, or if you're using white paper, color it in with a different color. What we're going to be doing now is cutting or ripping out different geometric shapes. So maybe we're making them to look kind of like stars, maybe we're making them to look like leaves, or just little blobs of color, whatever it might be. They don't have to all be the same shape. They can be all different shapes and sizes. And kind of just go in and get some fun angles and dimensions going on. Just make a whole bunch of them. Mm-hmm. All right. Then once you've got a good amount of them, take your glue stick back out, because we've got to put these on our work of art, right? So just like we did with our second background piece of paper and with our Pigasso head, I'm going to use our glue stick to attach all of these colored shapes onto our canvas. Just have it surrounding your Picasso head as if Picasso and Mootisse were giving each other a hug. One more time. There they go. Yeah. All around there. There it is. Now you've got your own pork of art. Or is it a mooster piece? You decide. Now that you've got it all finished, if you have any pieces of paper that are overhanging, either you or you can ask your parents to come and trim that off with your scissors so that all has a nice clean edge to it. And now you know what it would look like if Pigasso met Mootisse once again, because you made it. That's pretty awesome. That's pretty sweet. If you want to do this again, you can use different colors, you can cut out different shapes, do a different face design, you can just try all kinds of different things and keep on trying and make new things. Because that's how you learn and how you keep on making great art. Thank you.